Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Thank you so much for joining, lovely ladies. And this is one of these calls where we have one student in Australian time zone, one student in Canadian time zone, and I'm in the European time zone. So we've literally stretched everything out as almost as much as it could be stretched. And yet we managed to find a great time. This is, I think, a really good time. I hope that you ladies all agree because I guess for Rachel, this is good for you because you're in Melbourne and it's got to be about 8:30 in the morning now, right?
Yeah, this is really good for me. I'm actually
Yeah.
awake. I can actually think.
Were we killing you last time in the last classes?
Oh, as I've gotten older, I just can't. I can't burn the candle at both ends. I used to be able to when I was young, but no, can't
Right.
anymore.
All right. And we see Jana here.
Alhamdulillah, this is great for me.
Alhamdulillah. So we see Jana saying afternoon works way better for me. I'm a night owl since I work late. Okay. So that's fantastic from both of you. Thank you very much for the feedback because it's actually good for me too. So I can get my syringe doses of American football in till 10 o'clock at night, and then we can start the Hawza. So that's just fantastic. I'm here in Hamburg, Germany, and it's 10:30 p.m. So on a Sunday night. And I'm happy we chose this Sunday because I knew that some of you were maybe looking toward Christmas plans, because some of you are obviously converted Muslims like me, and you're thinking about your family plans for Christmas like me. So I thought maybe it would be easier to just pull the Hawza 1 week forward, and it seems that there was no massive objection to that. So Alhamdulillah, I'm happy that we made the move to this week 1 week earlier and with the new time and everything. So a lot of time shifting going on here, a lot of time shifting. So good stuff. So what I wanted to do, because today's Hawza, Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. So today's Hawza is going to be about two principles actually that we pack into one. And there are two reasons we pack this into one principle. Not one principle, one class, really. It is two principles, but one of the reasons is that they're so similarly related in a way. So what we're going to talk about is the fourth principle is Islam is inclusion, okay? And we'll talk about inclusion on many levels, outward levels, but also inward levels of what's called inclusion. We'll talk about that as well. And the fifth principle is Islam is interreligious dialogue. So the point is interreligious dialogue means if we were to say intra-religious dialogue, that would be within Islam, like for example, Sunni and Shia or Maliki and Hanbali, I don't know, Sufi and Irfani and these kind of different, you can group within Islam, you can find many kind of juxtapositions and find representatives of those respective groups of or conglomerates of Muslims to represent them and juxtapose them in different debates and all those kind of things. But this is intra-religious. But what we're talking about now is inter-religious, which means, of course, more like Muslim with Christian and Muslim with Jewish and Muslim with Buddhist and even Muslim with atheist and agnostic and things of that nature. So all of this is inter-religious dialogue and falls under that category. And since those two things have a lot in common and in fact work very nicely together, in other words, Islam being inclusion means to have an inclusive mind frame, okay? Inclusive mind frame, not an exclusivist mind frame, but an inclusivist mind frame. You are wishing the best for every individual on this planet, not only every individual human, every individual animal, every individual plant, every damn individual stone on this planet, you're wishing the best for them. You are not getting wrapped up in identity crises. I'm a Muslim, so I'm better than everyone else. I'm a Hanbali Muslim, so I'm better than the Malikis. I'm a Wahhabi, so I'm better than everyone on the planet, except for Sheikh Ibn Abbas or whichever one of these horrible Wahhabi sheikhs you want to take. So you don't get wrapped up in identity crisis. Islam is not an identity crisis, okay? Islam is a path toward inner and outer liberation, okay? And the way to be liberated is to be inclusive. Why? Because when you're inclusive, you open yourself up. First of all, your ego crashes, falls, and gets burned to the crisp, okay? So that only the ashes of your ego are left. And second of all, you start to manifest your inner wisdom and your inner essence in an inclusivist way. So in other words, in dialogue, in interactions with others, third parties, fourth parties, fifth parties, second parties, your birthday party, all the parties. Okay. And we'll go into both of those things a lot, and this inclusive or inclusivist manner of thinking and feeling and actually working in life is what leads you to be able to be in a position to really have an interreligious dialogue. And what I mean by really is we're not talking about these kind of potluck supper time things on a Saturday afternoon where, you know, some Christian guy in a frock and some Jewish guy with the kippah and some Muslim guy with a nice hat like me show up and take lots of pictures for the newspapers and talk about how great everything is and how lovely it would be if we wouldn't be killing each other all the time, which we are, unfortunately. But so we're not trying to whitewash somehow differences between the religions. We're trying to express fundamentally what we believe is the beauty of each of our own traditions, while at the same time being receptive to learning from the other traditions. In other words, this is a real meshing of ways and means. Yeah, it is not just simply pretending to somehow outwardly have a nice, as I said, potluck supper or something like this, and take lots of pictures to the media. But this is actually with the intention of growing closer together, learning from one another, and making inner changes that might be necessary. If I, as a Muslim, find something good from a Christian, I'm actually obliged as a Muslim to take it, okay? If I, as a Muslim, find something good with a Jewish person, I'm actually obliged to take it with me, and I'm obliged to learn from it. So, you know, so this is the whole point of, on the one hand, inclusion, and on the other point, interreligious dialogue. Only through inclusion, real inclusion, can we have real interreligious dialogue. So that's why these principles are super related, which is why, yeah, you know, absolutely. I sometimes read the Bible and there are stories in there that Muslims can learn from too. Funnily, I was just chatting about that with my lovely wife, who's a Persian lady, and I was telling her the same thing. I was telling her that if you just read the Bible, if you just ignore the Christians and what they've been doing for too many centuries in all parts of the world, namely colonialism, if you just ignore the Christians and actually just read the Bible, you will find some of the most beautiful stories in the Bible. And now my lovely wife on cue has just joined us. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Khanum man, Aziza Hamsar man, Samani Sistoni al Habari. So thank you for joining. So yeah, so as we were just speaking with my wife, we were saying the same thing that you just mentioned here, which is that sometimes reading in the Bible, there are great stories that Muslims can also learn from, yeah? And I was telling the story, and she knows the story, of course, but because it's such a famous story, but it's a story about how a Jewish man and women created zina, and somehow they were caught in zina, and which is, of course, an extramarital affair, yeah? And so the Jewish community was ready to throw stones at them, yeah? And they asked Jesus Christ, alayhi salam, Hazrat Isa, they asked him, what do you think about this? Give your judgment. And he said, okay, fine. The one who has never sinned may throw the first stone. The one who has never sinned may throw the first stone. And after this, all of the community were so ashamed of themselves because they knew that they had all sinned. No one could pick up a stone and throw it. Everybody went home. And this is not to excuse or somehow pardon, you know, zina and the horrible consequences of zina, especially when there are families involved, children involved, or maybe sexually transmitted diseases involved, or, you know, even just backstabbing in a relationship has its own karmas, and those who don't know them, be blessed not to know them. And so at the end of the day, you know, there's so much negative energy in zina that it's not to excuse any of that, but it's simply to, on a higher level, to tell like how happy people are to run out and make accusations and throw stones at others. And then when they look in the mirror, finally, you know, it's your own self that has done so much wrongdoing. What right do you have to throw a stone at another? So in other words, but this is a beautiful story. And my lovely wife mentioned that there was a similar story from Hazrat Ali alayhi salam. In fact, if you read the Naj al-Balagha, you'll read several stories like this. The Naj al-Balagha, for those who don't know, is the compendium of letters and hadith and wisdom quotes from Imam Ali alayhi salam. And I highly encourage you to read and have a look at it. But anyway, so that's the first reason. And the second reason that actually it's a more like technical reason why we want to group these two very nicely fitting principles together is because Simply, if we look at the calendar year, now we're in December, we're actually going a little bit faster than we usually do, which I appreciate. But usually we want to have 1 or 2 months at the end of the academic year, which means around the summertime, so that you lovely students have time to do your final thesis, okay? And think about what would you like to do as your final thesis. So again, just to quickly do some subliminal advertising for those who would like to do a final thesis. Basically, you can pick any one of the 10 principles that we choose, and you can elaborate on that. And you can maybe pick an example out of your own daily life, or you can yeah, you can find some historical examples and delve into those, or even you can go deep theologically into the language of the Quran, some of the hadith, what other scholars have thought about that particular principle. Challenge it also. You don't have to agree with everything that we present here. You're welcome to disagree. You're welcome to challenge, but just be ready that you might be challenged back. Okay. So you're welcome to take any of the principles in any direction that you want, that you like, and then develop a 3 to 5 page final thesis, a short final thesis, really. And please remember to quote properly from Quran and Sunnah and use good sources. I know that all of you in this room are familiar with that, inshallah. So the second reason is just to have some more time for everyone in the back to really polish their thesis and have a good thesis, because we will be presenting those theses in a Hawza. So that means that after I've done lots of talking and presenting, it will be your turn to talk and present. And you will present in one Hawza. Everyone will present their thesis in a span of maybe 15 to 20 minutes, and then have 10 to 15 minutes dialogue with the other students and get feedback. And then hopefully, after having defended your thesis, you'll get your completion certificate for the year. And you can move on to year 2, which is Usul al-Fiqh, which is a highly developed jurisprudential tour de force, if I may say so. And will be every 2 weeks, actually. That class will be every 2 weeks starting next September, inshallah. And well, we're already on our, we would be on our 3rd class then in Usul al-Fiqh. We've had already 2 classes graduating. And it's a really wonderful course. I promise you will never get an Islamic jurisprudential course like this one. Not anywhere in the world will you get it. So you just have to be ready to put in a lot of effort, because it is a lot of work. Okay, so this class is relatively soft class. Just show up every 4th Sunday of the month and maybe participate in some team chats and so on. It's very soft. Okay. So Usul al-Fiqh is really like another level. So really, if you want to put in the work on that one, man, you'll learn a lot. Yeah. And I hope that we see all of you there, inshallah. So that's why we group these 2 principles. But before we, inshallah, exactly. But before we go into the deeper depths of the 2 principles, what I wanted to do is just catch up a little bit with both of you on the last principle. And I wanted you to present a little bit of team exercise now. I know that Rachel answered a little bit her perspective on Islam being freedom, which I highly appreciated. It was actually new for me, this perspective, I have to say. It's the first time I've had someone so clearly say to me that you felt that the qadr, the aspect of qadr, of somehow destiny or premonition is not the right word, predestination or predestination, yeah, predestination is somehow, of destiny in general, is somehow liberating. So most people feel extremely bound or bonded by, or tied down by predestination, yeah? And so I'm curious, Rachel, if you wouldn't mind, please, Bismillah, if you could explain that a little bit for us.
Sure, inshallah. I think for me, the idea that you can let go of feeling like you need to control events is probably where the freedom is. Because if everything that has happened and everything that will happen is part of God's timeless knowledge, and that He has destined, the events that have happened in my life, God has put there for a reason, for me to learn from them, for them to give me some fashion of test. And sometimes they're difficult, really difficult. And sometimes they're, blessings in disguise, and sometimes they're more overt blessings. But I don't have any control over that. So I don't have to worry about that. There's no point feeling like, if I did this, then this would happen, and oh, then I could control this, and then this wouldn't happen. But the things that happen to you are for your benefit. So that you can let go of that feeling of worry of having to control. Now, that's not to say that I'm not human and I don't worry about things in the
Of course.
future. I do, because I'm
Sure.
human. But I can tell myself, look, this, ill health that I've had was for my benefit. There's something there that I need to learn from. And
Mhm.
that's very freeing, because I don't
Mhm.
feel bound up by this sort of sense of trying to control all the events around me.
Mhm.
So I guess
Mhm.
that's probably my perspective.
Yeah, that's wonderful. I mean, I really appreciate that. Yeah, I tend to, because okay, look, just for your information, and this absolutely has absolutely no bearing on what you just said whatsoever, because it's highly appreciated. But just for your information, the Shia in general, and particularly the Zaidi movement of the Shia, have always been more aligned with the side of free will.
Mm. Oh
Um,
yeah, my reactions to it are under my control.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, how I react to the events in my life. I'm talking about, so say for example, um, you know, just trying to think. Okay, when I was growing up, my family there, we were building a house,
Hmm.
and somebody stole. I mean, of all the things that you could steal, they stole things like the bathroom, the bath and the kitchen, and also the actual kitchen that was going to be installed. And it was a very traumatic time for my parents, and it really shifted the family dynamic and all those types of things. Now,
Oh, sorry to hear that.
how I respond to that, or how I think about that, how I recognize, the hand of Allah in my
Hmm.
life, that's up to me. That's
Hmm.
completely, and that's, I guess, where I would say I can see free will. Like how I respond to
Hmm.
things is up to me. But I,
Absolutely.
I have no control over, an asteroid zooming down and plonking in front of me tomorrow. Does that
Yeah,
make sense?
yeah, yeah. No doubt. I mean, this has been one of the largest, yeah, exactly. 12 verse 2. Predestination is not as strongly emphasized as it is in Sunni Islam. Exactly, exactly. See, and in Zaidi Islam, particularly the Imams have always more crystallized the free will aspect
Mm,
as opposed to the predestination aspect. So thank you
mm,
for that, Jana. I'm going to get to you in a second, Jana. You're not escaping giving us your feedback also. But to just cut back into this very quickly, yeah, so at the end of the day, we have to find that magical balance point between predestination and free will if we are to, let's say, find the key and the magic to this particular issue. And I think you're
mm,
very close to it with what you talk about. I want to mention an aspect. Those of you who know me a little bit longer know that I practice yoga. Actually, I'm a yoga teacher, and one of my yoga masters, really one of my yoga teachers, says, has a very deep aspect on this. What he teaches is that at the end of the day, when you come into this earth as a human being, you are already carrying like literally millions of years of karma. You are taking it with you into your new life, right? So you're being born into a human body. In other words, your breath, as Allah has said in the Quran, Allah Ta'ala has breathed his breath into this mixture of clay and water and brought forth this light as a human being, okay? And already just biologically being a human being and having this body is already millions of years of karma. In other words, we would call it predestination, is already on your back, yeah? But the magic key, or the kind of the way to open this door, is in many ways to accept this karma or accept this predestination aspect and work with it in the course of your lifetime. And this is a very beautiful thing because, as you said, things can happen to you, but karma is not that thing that happens to you, but karma is how you deal with what happens to you. Okay. And from this step, karma becomes what's called dharma. Dharma is like a path, right? So we would say Sirat al-Mustaqim, for example, the straight path. Yeah. So the straight path evolves out of what happens to us in our daily lives. So something might happen to you. How you react to it is whether you're on the straight path or whether you are astray, right? As it says in the فاتحة اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين آمين صدق الله العظيم. So, as we all know from the Fatiha. So, this is really, really, I mean, this is really, you know, a very important point and a door opening key when we reach this understanding that free will is not somehow reversing all of the karmic substance that we have, whether it's biological, sociological, like in what family or what country you were born in, parental, genetic, what you look like, how tall, how short, how, you know, big, small, what have you. But it's really so much about what you do with what's given to you in a particular life. What level of consciousness are you able to achieve in a given life? So this is the if you will, the magic key in this debate between predestination and free will. And I think this really deserves more exposition in an Islamic format. So I highly appreciate your opinion. And I would also ask, or your experience, and I would also highly ask, Jana, please, I hope I'm pronouncing your name right, by the way. Please inform me if I need to pronounce that differently. Um, and I would say, please, Jana, if you could give us also your example. It's your turn now to give us your example, if you will, please. If you were able to watch our video and tell us a little bit about your experience of Islam as freedom in your life, or in maybe some experience that you've had, or something that you've seen, maybe a third-party experience, or something you read maybe in a chat, or was between your friends, or anything that's in a real-life situation. We'd love to hear your experience. If you don't want to tell it because you don't want to share your voice, madly writing notes. That's great. So if you don't want to, you know, tell us with your voice, I totally respect that. I would just ask you please to type a little bit about it in the chat, and we'll be happy to justify whatever experience you have and talk about it, if you wouldn't mind. Shana's gone quiet. Are you with us, Shana? Can you hear us? Give me a hey, or type me a yes. Are you shy? Should we not put you on the spot like this? Yeah, okay. Great. So you want to type? Maybe you'd rather type. Yeah, great. Okay. Folks. Yeah, so while you're typing, yeah, so I just want to, you know, make sure that everyone has this feeling. I'll also ask my lovely wife in Persian, if I may. عزیزم جانم اگر خواستی خیلی دوست داشتیم الان بگی یک احساس که داری. اگر بگیم اسلام آزادی است، چی میخواییم بگیم با این که اسلام آزادی است؟ شاید در زندگی تو این احساس گرفتی، یا شاید در قرآن یک چیز خواندی، یا در نهج البلاغه، یا در تاریخ اهل البیت علیهم السلام اجمعین. اگر میخوایی بگی خیلی سپاسگزارم اگر الان گوش میدی.
سلام. بله. من فارسی بگم تا ترجمه کنم؟
یا باش.
فکر من اینه که اول اینکه فکری که انسان ها الان about آزادی دارن، این یک فکر اشتباهه. اینکه انسان ها فکر میکنن آزادی یعنی که ما هر چیز که میخوایم بکنیم. اما من میگم این هست زندگی like animal not آزادی. نه، آزادی یعنی این که یک فکر هست که روح انسان رو از اینکه اسلیف باشه یا like animal زندگی کنه آزاد میکنه. یعنی آزاد میکنه که به لول انسانیت برسه. نه؟
بلندتر یا نه میرسه، یعنی انشالله.
یعنی اینکه واقعا روحش انسان. در قرآن داریم که انسان میتونه مثل انیمال یا کم یا حتی پایین تر از انیمال باشه. نه؟ اما برای اینکه ما فاینالی به لول انسانیت برسیم که در قرآن انسان هست اشرف مخلوقات، یعنی بالاترین خلق، این هست این لول که انسان آزاد هست. یعنی از اسلیف بودن و انیمال بودن آزاده. نه؟ این هست اول برای من معنی کلمه آزادی. حالا میخوام این رو ترجمه کنم بعد کانتینیو میکنم.
Okay, so Ms. Samane is telling a nice story and saying, or actually explaining a principle, expounding on a principle, which is that we have to define the term freedom and define it properly. So while in some societies, especially today's kind of globalist society, we think about freedom as being able to do whatever you want, okay? The Islamic version of freedom is being free to become a higher level of human being. So in other words, leaving behind your animalistic desires and somehow your instincts and maybe your bad behaviors and somehow your negative aspects, which in fact are creating new karmas, which are holding you down, and rather freeing yourself from those karmas by changing your behavior, changing your approach, your attitude, your mindset, your energy approach to the universe. So that is indeed a very lovely definition of freedom. And then Samana would like to continue. Miss Samana would like to continue expounding on this, please.
اگر که اول یعنی معنی درست کلمه آزادی رو که بفهمیم بعد میتونیم بفهمیم که اسلام چرا هست آزادی. مثلا میگن اسلام برای زنها بد هست، اما من فکر میکنم اسلام برای زنها خیلی آزادی هست. اگر اسلام برای زن میگه حجاب، چون میخواد او رو از این که مردها از او لایک نمیدونم یک شوز لایک یک شوز لایک لباس لایک این چیزها یوز کنه فری کنه نه و حجاب هست آزادی. آزادی از این که یک انسان روح یک انسان بشه لایک یک اسلیف، بشه لایک یک میز، یک چوب، یک نمیدونم وال که جاست از این یوز کنیم و بعد که خسته شدیم یک جدید. نه این هست، این آزادی نیست.
یا درسته. ترجمه کنم.
Yeah.
So this lovely exposition continues, and Ms. Saman is saying, for example, people are saying, you know, women in Islam are somehow treated less than men, and women are somehow not free in Islam because they have to wear hijab and these things. And what Samana's answer is that hijab is actually a liberating aspect for women, because when a woman wears hijab, you know, a man cannot look at her like she's somehow an article to be purchased in a store, or somehow a piece of meat to be bought in a grocery market, or somehow acquirable, if you will. But it raises her outward level and her inward level to a higher level, and signals that she's only approachable through a spiritual level and not through a materialist level. And that's why hijab is actually liberating for the spirit of a woman, and rather than the opposite, which is so often portrayed in the mainstream media, which is actually that a woman would denigrate herself by wearing hijab. In fact, it's the complete opposite, according to Ms. Samana. And I tend to appreciate that viewpoint, even as a guy. Yeah, well, I'm somehow wearing some kind of head covering, but of course it's not the same. My hair is not so great as my wife's. So, but we highly appreciate that perspective, Ms. Sistani. Thank you so much.
میتونم هنوز کوچیک بگم؟
بگو.
این هست یک اگزمپل، یعنی همه احکام و شریعت اسلام این هست. اگر مثلا میگم جاست حجاب رو میگم برای چون من زن هستم، نه؟ و خیلی در دنیا یعنی این تبلیغ هست که زنهای مسلمان چند مظلوم هستن، شوهر آنها با اینها
یعنی باید حجاب رو بگیری و مثل
شوهرهای آنها اسلیف کردن که حجاب دارن، نه؟ اما این هست که این زمان که انسان ها میتونن از زیبایی یعنی از بادی یک انسان گذشت کنن، موو کنن و جاست برای فکرش و روحش برای او ریفکت دارن. ایوین اگر هیچ چیز از بادی این اصلا نقاب داره، هیچ چیز نمیبینن، نه؟ اما جاست فکر این کلمه این و روح این که یعنی با صحبت و فکرش اوپن میکنه میبینن و میگن واو ما چند تو رو دوست داریم، چقدر برای تو ریسپکت داریم. این هست اینجا که انسان فیلینگ آزادی داره. یعنی من آزاد هستم که فکرم رو اوپن کنم، آزاد هستم که روحم رو اوپن کنم. اما این زمان که جاست میگن اوه این زن چند قشنگ هست، چند سکسی هست، ما این رو دوست داریم، این که این بیشتر یعنی در زندان هست. اگر زشت هست هیچ کس به این گوش نمیده. این یعنی هست زندان بادی. آزادی این هست که بادی من هیچی نیست، جاست فکر رو روح من رو گوش بدید. من
خوب انرژیت، فکرت، فلسفیت، باطنیت، معنویت، اینا.
یا من هستم روح من، نه بادی من. بادی من فقط میره در سویل و فینیش میشه، اما روح و فکر من always هست. این زمان که اجازه دارم فکر و روحم رو اوپن کنم و forever در دنیا استی کنه، این هست آزادی زن. اگر من با یک نقاب فول سیاه میرم در نمیدونم مجلس آلمان و میخوام صحبت کنم و همه انسان ها گوش میدن و ریسپکت دارن و فاینالی استنداپ میکنن و چیز میکنن، این زمانه که من میگم در آلمان دموکراسی هست، آزادی هست. نه اینکه با یک لباس خیلی سکسی برم در مجلس و صحبت کنم بگن واو چند دموکراسی، این زن آزاد بود که بیاد اینجا صحبت کنه.
خب من این دلیل دارم که در یک کشور واقعا دموکراتی both درست هستن. یعنی یک زن میتونه دلیل اینه که خیلی میخواد سکسی لباس بپوشه هم میتونه، یعنی دلیل داره یعنی خیلی با نقاب بره. اما این چویس زن هست، میفهمی؟ یعنی من که مرد هستم میگن اگر
اسلام میخواد، یعنی میگم
اسلام بگم یعنی که با both side هست، میدونی؟ یعنی
من میخوام بگم یعنی اسلام با شریعتش و با احکامش میخواد انسان‌ها به این لول از آزادی برسن که از بادی و زیبایی موو کنن.
من ترجمه کنم، اوکی عزیزم؟ ممنون. So, to complete the discussion, Samana is saying that, Miss Samana is saying that essentially when we look at of all of the Shariat and all of the Dala'il or all of the so-called proofs of Islam, finally everything is leading toward liberation. Okay, so liberation from the body. In other words, the soul is trying to reach a higher level of inner existence and flourish spiritually, and therefore leaving the body behind us, leaving materialism behind us, and preparing ourselves for the next stage of experience in life, which of course is when we leave our body. Finally, we die and we pass to a higher level of consciousness after so-called death, yeah? And this is indeed the whole preparation of this life is to pass through and transition spiritually to a higher level and get ready for the next life, inshallah. So in that sense, liberation in Islam is exactly that. It's liberating ourselves from the slavery that is associated with maintaining this body and all of its desires, and then on a more spiritual level, maintaining the ego system that is always concerned about survival and reputation and money and sex and food and fear of survival and all these kind of things. So leaving that ego behind us and in fact moving on to a higher level of existence, and everything in Islam is geared toward that, and that is the true liberation. So this is again to properly define the term liberation. So thank you so much, Ms. Samone, for this. And I did see that Jana wrote something in the chat. And you're writing here and saying, I guess the main thing I took from it is that Islam is, in a sense, is freedom from worldly obligation. Yeah, so it's very similar. Yeah, very similar thing that you were saying. Like you should be doing everything to serve Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The world puts a lot of pressure on us to follow trends and such. Absolutely, Islam frees us from that. Exactly. So very similar. You were saying the same thing or similar thing as someone was saying now. So yeah, absolutely appreciated. And this again is, you know, it's on one level it's theoretical. And on another level, though, it's very practical. So in other words, it has to do with, especially when we live in the Western societies, you know, how do we show up in society? How do we present ourselves? You know, do we give our hand to the opposite sex when we meet someone from the opposite sex or not? Or, you know, do we give big hugs to the opposite sex or not? You know, which is more in our Western tradition to do sometimes these things. And it really is about reducing our dependency on experiences or incidents or events happening in this world and preparing ourselves, releasing ourselves from the bondage of the body and the karma of the body, getting ready for the next level experience, inshallah. Wonderful. I really appreciate all of your 3 opinions. This has been very, very deep discussion, and I highly appreciate that. So thank you so much. So any questions, any more comments about Islam is freedom? هنوز یک چیز میخوایی بگی عزیزم؟
I want to say one poem از مولانا. سیم فکر که من میگم about آزادی در اسلام این هست شعر مولانا. اگر اجازه دارم این رو بخونم بعد هر کس بره ترجمه انگلیسیش رو یعنی خودش بخونه.
باش اگر یعنی اجازه داریم بعد تو من میخواهی اینو بخونی الان و بعد در چی کتاب هست من رو بگی و من این رو پست کنم.
مولانا.
خب چی کتاب و چی
دیوان شمس غزلیات غزل نامبر 636.
باش بعد من رو میگی و ما در چت پست کنیم.
میخوای ترجمه کن که من چی میخوام بگم؟
چون فکر کنم نمیفهمم تو بخون عزیزم باشه؟
نه خب بگو که میخوام یک شعر بخونم.
Yeah, so Miss Samana would like to present a poem of Rumi, the famous Rumi, Maulana, the Persian mystic, which actually Jana just posted a video in the chat, so thank you so much for that. And yeah, great. So Samana would like to read it in Farsi, and then we will find the translation of this and we will post it afterward in our lovely Team Delta chat for all of you to reflect.
This is about freedom in Islam.
Yeah. Bismillah.
مولانا say بمیرید بمیرید در این عشق بمیرید در این عشق چو مردید همه روح پذیرید بمیرید بمیرید وز این مرگ مترسید کز این خاک برآیید سماوات بگیرید بمیرید بمیرید وز این نفس ببرید که این نفس چو بند است و شما همچو اسیرید یکی تیشه بگیرید پی حفره زندان چو زندان بشکستید همه شاه و امیرید بمیرید بمیرید به پیش شه زیبا بر شاه چو مردید همه شاه و شهیرید بمیرید بمیرید وز این ابر برآیید چو زین ابر برآیید همه بدر منیرید خموشید خموشید خموشی دم مرگ است همه از زندگی است اینک ز خاموش نفیرید. This is thank you.
Or as the poets, they do this. When the poets, if you go to one of these poetry clubs, you know, and they don't really clap. So now I'm snapping for you. So very nice. Thank you so much. Very beautiful. Okay, Divana Shams. Okay, great, great. So we will find the translation of this, but it's very beautiful. I mean, I could only understand, let's say, basically the idea of breaking free from your nafs and somehow being free from this. So, but I hope that I can post a better translation for you then going forward. Actually, I have all the translation of the Divana Shams, so it shouldn't be a problem. I'm sure we can post it very soon in the chat, inshallah. خیلی سپاسگزاریم. خیلی ممنونم خانم. Thank you so much.
I hope you like it.
It was lovely. Thank you so much. It was very lovely. باشه. So let's see. Maybe in parallel, I will try to find it. If you give me the number, can you give me the number, عزیزم?
دیوان شمس غزل 636.
دوباره 600
36.
36. Okay.
636.
Yeah, let's see if we can find. We have one here translated from Coleman Barks. Okay, Coleman Barks, a very special translator. Let's put it that way. Let me see if I can find it here. No, it's not really showing up here. Is it? Aha, look at that. We have it. We have the. Oh, look how fast we are online. My God. This is unbelievable. Are they really going to give me the whole thing, the divan? Let's see. This is like the worst website I've ever seen. I'm going to try to find it now because I'd love to follow it up. Yeah, there we go. Okay, let's take the PDF. Okay. And normally I'm always like saying we should buy the articles and we should not simply find PDFs and spread them around. So don't think that I'm somehow copying out on that, but I would just like to, I will send a link to buy it as well for those of you who'd like to buy it. Inshallah. Oh, look how big this is. Okay. 636. Thank you for bearing with me, everyone. We'll get there. Jesus. That's going to take a lot more.
پس من لینک فارسیش رو الان در گروه حوزه سند کردم.
خب خیلی ممنونم عزیزم، خیلی ممنونم. الان میخوام این رو اینجا پیدا کنم. خب چون میدونی که Okay, but anyway, ladies, I will find this, I promise, inshallah, and I will translate it. Oh, look who someone is joining us. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Okay. So, someone is in the chat. Okay. Yeah. Technology is amazing. There are apps that even do live translation, but I don't think they cope with Molana, and I don't think so too. Most online translations suck at complex languages like Arabic, Mandarin, etc. Absolutely. So someone has joined us named Hal Naomi, and welcome to our class, Mr. or Mrs. Hal Naomi. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Thank you for joining. You just missed a lovely poem recited by Ms. Khanuma Samaneh, who's one of our lovely students, as you can see. But she has posted it in the chat, so you can see it in the chat. It's from Ganjur. Okay, that's great. Yeah, we will find the translation for sure and post it for you. But اگر میخوای explain کنی چی میگه عزیزم خیلی زود میتونم ترجمه کنم کوچیک.
یا اگر کوچیک فقط بگم در بزرگ پیکچر
یا کوچیک بگو و ما میتونیم بعد ترجمه کنیم باشه.
یا میگه که یعنی نفس و همه این چیزها که نفس انسان میخواد هست ریلی زندان. نمیدونم لایک همه گناه هایی که الان مردم در دنیا میکنن و زمانی که این رو لفت کنید و بمیرید یعنی دد بشید نه اما این معنی نیست که ریلی دد بشید، میگه یعنی از این دنیا نه؟ یعنی از این چیزی که نفس میخواد دد بشه نه این زمانیه که شما شما برید در این ساید شریعت و اسلام، این زمانه که شما تازه فری میشید، فریدم میگیرید، آزادی میگیرید نه و میگه که در این زمانه که شما از سویل میرید و آسمان رو میگیرید.
فهمیدم.
و میگه که این زمانیه که شما این زندان رو میشکنید و در این زمانه که هر یکی از شما هست شاه و امیر و دیگه نیاز ندارید به یک پرزیدنت، شاه، امیر یا خلیفه something like this، چون هر یکی از شما این هستید. این زمانی که زندان نفس رو بشکنید و از این دنیا، یعنی این چیز که در دنیا دوست دارید موو کنید نه؟
راست ترجمه کنم.
میگه فریدم این هست یعنی مولانا.
ممنون. ترجمه کنم. بسم الله. So yeah, so the poem of Maulana Rumi is saying basically that when we're able to break free of our body and escape the prison of what's called the nafs, which is the lower aspect of the energy system, which is like about survival and reproduction and eating and these kind of things, just maintaining our animal-like biological subsistence in the world, then this is when we are free of these worldly kind of materialist bondage, and finally we become free and we die in a sense. Our material life dies, but we're able to elevate to a higher source of spirituality and energy, and this is the path of Islam, inshallah. Okay, so you're telling us you have no sound. What can we do about your sound? You have all your headphones audio on? Question. You can try to leave and rejoin. This may be the best thing for you. You can try to rejoin. Otherwise, leave sounds kind of hard. There's a function to test microphone and speaker. Exactly. Yeah, you can try to rejoin. That's great. Yeah, so yeah, exactly. There's a Christian monastic saying along the lines of if you die before you die, then you won't die when you die. Yeah, exactly. And even if we read the Qur'an, there's this famous verse which is die before you die, right? And I'm gonna see if I can find that. Maybe I'm faster to find that than I was to find the translation of this Rumi. And let's see if we can find it. Let's see if we find it. Is it a hadith or is it a die before you die hadith? Yeah, it seems to be a hadith of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Here's a hadith. Here's a group from the Naqshband that tells about the story of die before you die. And this is a big subject, a number of names and existence. Okay, this is going super deep, but I'm happy to anyway share this with you, although it does not directly, yeah, Hisham Kabani is just a great sheikh. Let me post that in the chat, actually. So here you can see in the in this chat, you can find the link, and I'll post it again in the group. It's from Hisham Kabani, who's a great Naqshbandi sheikh, living in Dearborn, Michigan, I believe. And you can really learn. These guys, these Naqshbandis are Sunni Muslims, yeah, but they're so spiritual, and they also love Hazrat Ali and the Ahlul Bayt so much. So we don't make a difference here between Sunni and Shia in this deeper spiritual sense. Yeah, exactly. They're absolutely great. I completely agree with that. Me too. Okay, so die before you die. Again, this is the same concept as in the poem of Rumi that Semane just read to us, yeah? Die before you die. It's not really death. It's a higher level of experience, okay? But then again, real death is also not really death, inshallah. It is a higher level of energetic experience, inshallah. Wallahu a'lam. If anything else is left from this discussion, you're welcome to say it now. Otherwise, I'd love to jump into the principles 4 and 5. Hello, sweetie. Hello. I'd love to jump in. Okay, if no more further comments, without further ado, let me share my screen. Okay. Please let me know if you can see my screen. I know that I'm screen sharing. Hello. Can you see my screen? I see chats, lots of chats. Yes. Okay, great. Fantastic. Okay, Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. So, yeah, welcome to the Unity Hawza, according to my dear Imam, Sayyid Mahdi Imam Razvi. Rahmatu Allahu alayhi. So, yeah, 10 principles of Islam. And as you see, the 4th and 5th principles are Islam is inclusion and Islam is interreligious dialogue. So we started to talk about that. And I'd like to just read from this, and I'm very happy if you jump in, have any comments or questions in the meantime. Islam is inclusion and tolerance. Consequently, this requires that all Muslims hold respect for those other viewpoints within Islam, as well as for people of all religions and worldviews, provided, of course, they equally reciprocate same levels of inclusion and tolerance, inshallah. Now, there is a lovely document for those who have not been introduced to this yet, which is a common word, which kind of came into existence after the crazy backlash against Islam that happened after September 11th, for those of you who are old enough or young enough to remember that, back in 2001. And when this so-called ground zero thing happened, we'll never know really what's behind the truth of that. Only Allah knows, subhanahu wa ta'ala. But whatever that is, somehow there was a huge backlash against Islam. And Prince Ghazi of Jordan, actually the Hashemite king or prince of the kingdom, started researching deeply and contacting with dignitaries of all of the so-called madhahib or jurisprudential schools of Islam, and they put together this document called A Common Word. And this is a really important milestone in the history of Islam that kind of was the first step in overcoming all of these differences, whether Sunni or Shia or, you know, Jafari Shia and Ismaili Shia and all of these things, because all of the madhahib signed on to it. The Sufis, yeah, even the Hanbalis from Saudi Arabia signed on to it, which is, you know, kind of an amazing achievement in itself. And they all really signed into this, and it became a really important kind of revival movement at its time within Islam, and especially in the scholarly world of Islam. And so this lovely verse of the Qur'an, Baqarah, Surah Baqarah, the second surah, ayat 62, which is truly the believers and the Jews and the Christians and the Sabians, those who believe in Allah Ta'ala and the last day and perform righteous deeds shall have their reward with their Lord Ta'ala and shall neither fear nor grieve. Okay, and we can find many such ayat in the Quran. I'm not just cherry picking here. You can literally find ayat like this all over the Quran, in which it's said that the righteous under the Christians and the Jews and the believers, those who do good deeds and believe in Allah and the last day, Yawm al-Qiyamah, they will find their reward with Allah Ta'ala. And so this is a clear, again, clear documented Quranic ayat. Although there may be those who don't like it, they still have to accept it because it's from the Quran. So it's not about liking or disliking, it's about accepting, it's about submission, right? So it should be, Islam is submission, so they should submit. Those who don't like it should submit. And in this case, it's submitting to the idea of tolerance. Okay, here comes Hal Naomi again. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Thank you for joining, Hal Naomi, once again. And hopefully your sound works better. And maybe you can see, this may be better for you in case you cannot hear us now. At least you can see the text, yeah? So that might help you a little bit. Yeah, good old September 11th. You were like 10 years old when that happened. Yeah, I was like, what was I, 21, 22, something like that. Feels like frickin' yesterday. It sure does, doesn't it? So yeah, so Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Again, truly the believers and the Jews and the Christians and the Sabians, those who believe in Allah and the last day and perform righteous deeds, shall have their reward with their Lord and shall neither fear nor grieve. Okay, so this is a clear dalil about the inclusive and tolerant practice of Islam when practiced properly. Okay. So let's move on to the next principle and read that, and then we go and we talk about this whole picture, how all of this locks in together. I hope that Hal can hear us. Yeah, great, you can hear us. Okay, that's wonderful. That's good news. That's good news. Welcome aboard. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Marhaba, marhaba. Okay, so going to the next stage, Islam is interreligious dialogue with all Abrahamic religions, as well as with all remaining world religions, spiritual practices, and worldviews without exception. In his representative role as a formal leader of the Zaydi community in Hamburg, Imam Razvi alayhi salam always insisted that Islam must hear out all other religions and worldviews just as they should hear out his Islamic perspective. Of course, constructive criticism can and should play a part in any higher debate culture. Let me see if I can do what I want to do. Not today. Yes, I can. There we go. Yeah. And in a safe and protected environment, of course, leads to a fruitful differentiation between viewpoints such that each party can express its facets and nuances revolving around any particular topic. So in other words, people can talk to each other without being assholes, okay? This is very rare in religion, okay? That two people can discuss with each other without being assholes and yet be involved in their religion, yeah? There are too many assholes in religion. That's why I don't usually swear on this program and say bad words, but sometimes this has to be said. You know, if you're gonna be religious, don't be an asshole. And that really has a wide variety of variations all over the religious communities. And usually it ends up with people wearing, you know, funny clothes and trying to read a lot of books and somehow impose their, really more than anything, their ego on a different kind of peoples and communities in order to somehow make themselves more important, maybe also financially enrich themselves, maybe also for politics, maybe also for women. We see all kinds of crazy things, unfortunately, in religious communities. And we hope that we, with time, get rid of all these people, because it's very difficult to change their behavior. So the best is to just get rid of them. And really, the best is to put mechanisms in place to make sure that people never grow into this kind of ego direction. And that means having constructive criticism. And that means being able to listen to others. And that means being able to learn from others. And that means being able to take from others that which we did not have before. As the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ has said, seek knowledge everywhere, even unto China. So that means even if we go to a culture which may be foreign for us, the way that China may have been foreign for the Arab Bedouins at the time of the Prophet ﷺ, we should be able to learn from the Chinese in that sense, or learn from the Africans, or learn from the Latin Americans, or from the women, or from the men, or from the old, or from the young, or it doesn't matter what group, yeah? The rich and the poor, and it really doesn't matter. We should be able to learn from everyone is what is meant here, yeah? And that ties us back, of course, into our earlier principle, which is Islam is inclusion and tolerance, okay? So in that sense, these two principles are very much aligned, yeah? Imam Razvi alayhi salam was always certain that the dialogue between world religions would enhance and add value to each aspirant rather than removing anything, and that Islam would ultimately become more mature and enlightened through such fruitful exchange. Well, we haven't seen much maturity and certainly very little enlightenment within Islam recently, but then I guess you could say the same for all religions. Unfortunately, maturity and enlightenment are rare and expensive products. So we hope indeed that you are able and capable and interested, inshallah, and involved and engaged with listening to others, opening your mind, opening your spirit, learning from others, growing with others, not being closed-minded, and basically not being a jerk, to use a different word than I used last time, inshallah. If anything, when you leave this class, you know, try to be a little bit more inclusivist. Try to include those around you with your Islamic perspective. Don't shut down on people. Don't shut down the lemonade stand. Yeah, keep the lemonade stand open. Anybody who wants to buy lemonade can buy lemonade. Okay, and share what you can share without imposing yourself and your views. Just share, because sharing is a natural thing that happens between human beings, inshallah. And that is the whole point of this interreligious dialogue, is to share. What have I learned? What can I learn from you? And really try to mature in this process and grow into an older soul, if you will, inshallah. So for this reason, Imam Razvi alayhi salam was able to earn sincere respect from those responsible for other world religions in the Hamburg area and in Germany, as only a few religious representatives of his generation were able to achieve. He considered everyone to be believers who believed in and trusted in a higher spiritual source of creation, one spiritual source of creation, and who consciously calibrated their moral compass accordingly. There's a wonderful story about the German Verfassungsschutz, which is something like the CIA, the German CIA. And, you know, they've got their eyes on all of the kind of more important Muslim people and religious minorities in case they're cooking up any BS within Germany. Of course, every country has their own governmental watchdogs. And one day he was teaching in the Blue Mosque, and two, yeah, you can call them German CIA guys, they approached him and he said, "Would you like to have a tea?" And they said, "We're here to observe you. We're not here to drink tea." And so he said, "That's your privilege. Feel free to observe." And that was the way of Imam Razvi. And then afterward, if you actually, because the Verfassungsschutz, the German CIA, if you will, they're obliged to report their findings in a yearly annual report, and you can go through the report and you can read what they have found about all the different groups. And it says in there, Imam Razvi, as opposed to most of the religious representatives, is actually sincerely interested in interreligious dialogue. So in other words, they juxtaposed Imam Razvi for being sincere, not only compared with other Muslim representatives, but also Christian and Jewish and other representatives. So that's coming from the watchdog, the government watchdog. That's kind of a compliment. So we can say that there must have been some truth in it then, yeah? Let's see what we have here. Comments going on. Yeah, it's usually why I hate religious discussions. Yeah, I know I'm not wrong. Unfortunately, I'm not wrong. But things will get better if we practice it. If we practice and if we teach it, things will get better, inshallah. Yeah, religion is a great place for those people to hide, as it gives them some veneer of respectability. That's how Rasulullah ﷺ was with the non-Muslims he lived with. That is absolutely true. You heard Shia mosques were being raided in Germany. Yeah, that is partly true, but it is also partly true that they're not 100% not at fault. Okay, so this is a topic for another day, but a lot of steps could have been taken to avoid the step that the government made. Here in Hamburg, actually, specifically in Hamburg, at the Blue Mosque, where Imam Razvi taught for 50 years, as a matter of fact, alayhi salam. These raids happened at the Shia mosques, but these are the Iranian government-owned and managed and proprietated mosque. Yeah, just one mosque, really. And it's of course it's nice for the Shia to have a beautiful mosque. The history of this mosque is actually that it was built during the time of the Shah, Mohammad Reza Shah, before Ayatollah Khomeini came into power. So the history of this mosque goes much deeper than the revolution in Iran back in 1979 and Khamenei and all those guys. And so it is not right to kind of bind up this mosque and bind up this Shia Islam always with the Iranian government, okay? There is a Shia Islam outside of the Iranian government, and it's very important to mention that, because that seems to be a source of confusion for many people that are interested in Shia Islam, and they don't know anything about Shia Islam other than that the Iranian government is Shia and that the Iranian government is not very good, yeah? As most Iranians will agree if you speak with them privately and off the record. So it has absolutely been the case that Shia Islam had survived more than 1,300 years without an Islamic state in Iran. Okay, so how did that happen? I mean, does that mean 1,300 years of Shia Islam have no meaning? Of course, it cannot mean that. Yeah, so obviously there is a Shia Islam outside of the Islamic government of Iran, even if that government doesn't like to hear that, but they don't have to like everything. It's their problem. So they have to deal with themselves. If they're going to take the name of Islam in their mouth, then they better present Islam in the right way. Otherwise, the responsibility is fully on them. And that's why I take a very neutral approach. I don't have any real sympathy. They had many opportunities in Hamburg to fix that situation before it came to this clash. And I hope that they will fix it now. And I hope that hopefully this is a good outcome for everyone, and this will lead a path, hopefully, after a kind of hot period, hopefully to a reconciliation. But again, this is the job not only of the German society, but also of the current management of the Iranian mosque, and inshallah. So that's a little side topic, but again, this touches the subject of interreligious dialogue, because in the time of Imam Razvi, he was actually in charge of the Department of Interreligious Dialogue at the Blue Mosque, and at that time they had a really easy time with all of the German authorities because Imam Razvi was representing it, and he was truly representing it. And now that he's gone for so many years, both at least in body, not necessarily in spirit, but certainly in body, those who have stepped in, so to speak, yeah, they have a very different perspective on that. They have a much more Iranian governmental slant on that. Imam Razvi alayhi salam was from India, And he was teaching at the Blue Mosque before the revolution during the time of the Shah. So he has a very different spirit, let's say. He brought a very different spirit to the mosque than the people that are in power now. And I better not say too much, so let's leave it at that. We have a nice chat. The West just thinks that Islam is violence and hate. I wish we had more people like your Imam representing it now. Ameen, ameen. So do I, so do I, so do I. Bismillah. Inshallah, that's why we're here, fostering and promoting his legacy as he asked me to do. Alayhi salam, and we're doing the best we can. So if you manage to join our little movement and promote the Hawza and also promote your own self and your own experience within your own societies and communities, then of course we can achieve that goal, inshallah. So every waterfall starts with a single drop, okay? So be that drop. Gosh darn it, go out and be that drop, inshallah. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. And there are some among them who speak ill of the Prophet, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, by saying he listens to everyone. Tell them he listens to everyone for your own good, and he trusts in Allah Ta'ala, and he trusts the faithful, and he is a blessing for those who believe. For those who offend the apostle of Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala, there is a painful punishment. This is Qur'an, Surah Tawbah, Ayat 61. Sadaqallahul Aliyul Azim. So again, the point here is he listens to everyone, okay? Now find me a Muslim mullah who really listens to everyone. Just one. I just want one, okay? I'll give you a hint. It'll take a long time, yeah? Exactly, not many exist. So it'll take a long time. And the problem is now that people are doing this not only for, again, one thing is the ego and the drive and representing and all that stuff, but another thing is money, okay? Or political power, influence, yeah? And it's just unbelievable. Like, God is not able to defend his own rights, you know? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is not capable of, you know, somehow doing everything, taking care of everything himself. He needs you, yeah? Why these people think that? Why these people think that anybody needs them, yeah? No one needs anyone. No one needs us, yeah? We are in need. We are in need of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So none of us have the privilege or the right to think that we're somehow representatives of God on this planet. This is a crazy thought, yeah? And this is what has been misleading Islam for 1,300 and some odd years. And fortunately, we have representatives of Islam like Imam Razvi alayhi salam, and of course the 12 Imams alayhim salam ajma'in, and all the different Zaydi Imams of time alayhim salam ajma'in, and those who are to come. And there are also very good, you know, Sufi teachers who are not Imams and not Sayyids either. So this is not just a Sayyid discussion, you know, but there are also wonderful, like Sheikh Hisham Kabani that we talked about just now, who's an Naqshbandi Sheikh, who's coming from, I believe he's from Lebanon, if I'm not mistaken, originally from birth. And he's a lovely gentleman and very spiritual guy and writes wonderful books. And although he's practicing Sunni Islam, but we love him. We love him here in the Hawza because he's teaching love, that's why. And if you give love, you receive love, yeah? This is why I'm always saying that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has two names for mercy, Ar-Rahman Ar-Rahim, and he has two names for love, Al-Hub wal-Wadud. Okay? So if you think about this, of all the different attributes he has of the 99 names, two of them are for mercy and two of them are for love. And this should be a signal, somehow a teaching lesson for us, inshallah. Wallahu a'lam. So let's check the chat. So some more comments. Mullah lesson when it comes to khumsa. That's fantastic. I like you, Hal, Naomi, whoever you are. Very good. Very good. I like that. That's for sure. Sometimes it is at the level of individual community members, the aunties who run everything in the background but get no credit, or generally engaging with the broader community in a positive way. I completely agree with you. I completely agree. Usually the aunties have less ego than the uncles, yeah? It is a very male, masculine thing to jump out and impose yourself and pretend to be important. Unfortunately, there are some women now who are doing it too. But it's always been more of a thing for guys. So somehow this stopped sharing my screen. Can I go back? Okay, I'll just do a new share then. Yeah. If I close this, if I close this, okay, yeah. Can you still see my screen, everyone? Anyone shout? Can you see my screen? Okay, some chats, lots of chats. Yes, wonderful. Yeah, great. So, yeah, in a sense, we've reached the end of the formal part. So if you'd like to ask any questions now, I hope that you've seen how inclusion and tolerance leads to interreligious dialogue, and the other way around also. If we practice interreligious dialogue sincerely with the aim to learn and grow, then we can become more inclusivist in our approach to the world and ourselves. If we shut others out, in effect, we're shutting out parts of ourselves. It's very important to understand that the outward is as the inward, okay? The world is nothing more than a reflection of our perspective and our intentions, yeah? And our hearts, in fact. So, in other words, what I put into the world is what I see in the world. And what I see in the world goes back inside, and it's a cycle. So the first way to dominate this cycle is to take control of how you look at the world and how you perceive the world and how you function in the world. This is something that everyone can do by themselves, okay? And this is the step to becoming more inclusivist, because by becoming more inclusivist, your opportunities multiply, okay? Your opportunities and your avenues toward reaching a higher state of liberation multiply, okay? And it's a function of inclusion, yeah? The more inclusivist you are, exponentially your path toward liberation grows and expands, okay? So this is a very spiritual aspect of inclusion. And that's why we have verses like this in the Qur'an, so that we may be blessed, inshallah, with the opportunity to practice inclusion in our daily lives at an ever higher and higher level until we understand oneness. Wahdat al-wujud is the highest level of inclusion, the unity of existence, wahdat al-wujud, as a concept, not only a concept, but also as a realization, as an experience, as a form of enlightenment, okay? This is not something you can discuss too much theoretically, at least until year 4. In year 4, we talk about Islamic mysticism, inshallah, and we'll talk a lot about Wahdat al-Wujud for sure. But in this class, we can say Wahdat al-Wujud, the unity of existence, can be something that is experienced and realized much more than something that can be theoretically discussed, okay? So we have a few more comments in the chats. Yes, wonderful. Especially here in the West, we got to take a proactive approach. I agree. As mentioned, the West has certain preconceived notions about Islam. We need to try to prove people wrong, although through we need to prove people wrong through actions, since they won't be convinced otherwise. Yeah, I agree completely. Yeah. I mean, living a life and then surprising someone when you do a good deed and they ask you, what's your faith? And you say Islam. People are sometimes shocked. You get the funniest reactions. So yeah, but definitely keep going. Remember that every waterfall starts with a single drop. Okay. Anything else? Any final comments? How can you invite people to the message of Allah if you make it mean? Exactly. Yeah, exactly. So yeah. And what message would it be if we made it mean? What message would it be? What is this lovely exclusivist message that seems to reach some portion of the youth? This is what always wonders me. Although I understand people are looking for family, or people are looking for inclusion in a small group that's juxtaposed to others, and therefore at some point a certain type of people need an enemy in order to unite. That's a sad thing, to need an enemy in order to unite. There is no enemy. There is no enemy. And if there had been an enemy, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala would never have said La ikraha fid din. He would never have said Lakum dinukum waliyad din. Sadiq Allahul Azim. He would never have mentioned these words. And these are some of the most important ayat in the Qur'an. And but we need to remember there is no enemy. There's only a mirror of ourselves in this existence. And once we realize that, there's no potential for identity mongering, There's no potential. Yeah, you've raised your hand. There's no potential for identity wrapping or somehow getting lost in false identity. Go ahead, Rachel. Go ahead.
Probably easier to say it than type it. I think you're sort of talking about this notion of moving away from kind of like the animal side of things.
Mm-hmm.
There is actually some interesting research on stigma and how psychologically human beings, as you say, create enemies, but they also have this kind of tendency, evolutionarily speaking, to fear others because of the perception that they might carry disease or risk or whatever. This is something that is, I guess, part of our animal or our biological sort of proclivities. But the whole point about, as you say, the whole point about the spiritual path being allowing us to escape those types of unconscious sort of animalistic proclivities is the deen, is the path, is what we should be doing. And so being aware of that and resisting that impulse to stigmatize others or to fear others is essentially what allows us to spiritually grow. Which is it's just very interesting research on stigma and the role that it plays actually in group survival and group bonding. But I think the way that the Western Academy has looked at it has been more that this is just a function of how human beings work, and they haven't sort of taken it to that next step of, well, you know, yes,
Connecting the dots, right? Somehow.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And that there's a higher purpose for being able to, I mean, the thing is again, it's like, I don't know if you've seen the movie Dune. I love
that sounds very Australian, but no, I haven't.
Yeah. Oh, there's a movie called Dune that just came out recently. It's based on a sci-fi book by Frank Herbert.
Okay.
And in it, there's a test that the potential Messiah has to go through, and he has to put his hand in this box, which makes him feel like his hand is burning away. And the person who's testing him says, you know, this is what we do to test to see if you are an animal or if you are a human. And if you can keep your hand in the box, even though you think it's burning away, that means you're human. And she's going to kill him if he doesn't do it, because it's a sci-fi movie. Anyway, he manages to do it. But that's, I think, what it is if we're able to be aware of our biology, but then also to be able to overcome it when we need to, is what is the higher state of being, I think you might say.
Yeah, great. Wow, that's really interesting. So if you have access to those kind of studies,
Sure.
I would be highly appreciative if you'd post them in the chat, please.
Yeah, absolutely, inshallah.
Number one. And number two, that might be a really interesting research subject for your final thesis.
Oh, yeah, I hadn't thought about that, but yeah, that'd be interesting.
So anyway, we have another 5 principles to go, by the way, so you don't have to decide now. But that might be a really interesting subject for a final thesis. I actually am fascinated by that. I am fascinated. I've never really put thought into that, but that seems to be a really interesting perspective about why, some kind of groups like Wahhabis and these kind of Salafi guys, why they manage to recruit so many, so many members, because they just appeal to this biological stigma of survival somehow, and identity creation and group, animalistic group creation somehow. That's fascinating. I would really appreciate if you posted something about this in the chat, please.
Yeah, sure, inshallah.
Okay, that's great. So what I'd like to give you, all lovely students, as your homework, and you can probably already guess what it is as usual, please, for the 4th and 5th principle, this time 2 homework, please. You have a little bit more time because we had this class 1 week earlier than Christmas, so that means 5 weeks until our next class, inshallah, or maybe even 6. Nah, 5. It's gonna be 5 because the 1st is a Monday, so it'll be 5 weeks till our next class, inshallah. So you have 5 weeks. So I'd love to see you in the chat, please, expounding about your experiences of Islam being inclusion and Islam being interreligious dialogue, inshallah. There are so many verses in the Quran about discussing, the best way of discussing with the Christians and the Jews and the unbelievers, the so-called non-believer, and so on. So, I mean, the Quran itself is full of interreligious dialogue, yeah? And the life of the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ and the Ahlul Bayt ﷺ are so full of examples, yeah? So feel free to quote from the texts, quote from the Quran, quote from the Najul Balagha, quote from the Hadith collections, where you find Islam to be inclusion and where you find to be interreligious dialogue, inshallah. Okay? Yeah, xenophobia, yeah, I can imagine this. Crazy guys everywhere. Crazy guys everywhere. So everyone, so that's your homework. Any questions on the homework? If there are no questions on the homework, so we will post our translation of the Rumi poem that was read by Ms. Samone. And we will also, hopefully from Rachel, receive this lovely study, or a lovely study, one of many perhaps, about group building through the stigma of biological survival, which is just a brilliant aspect. And we wish you all a very lovely time. Yeah, Imam Sadiq alayhi salam, absolutely. He was, yeah, you know, Sadiq is a great example because Sadiq alayhi salam he was actually a teacher of Imam Malik, which many people don't know, okay? And the same way that Muhammad Baqir and Imam Zayd were actually, alayhim assalam ajma'in, were actually teachers of Imam Abu Hanifa. And on the one hand, and Sadiq at the same time also had dialogues with Christians and with Jews and with the Umayyads and with the Abbasids as they changed during his lifetime. That shift of power kind of happened in the lifetime of Sadiq alayhi salam. So that's a really interesting time period for the history of the Imams of the Ahlul Bayt alayhim assalam ajma'in. So that's a really interesting example, exactly. But so that's your homework, okay? And you have 5 weeks, and I'd love to see a lively discussion, please. And if you've posted once, it doesn't mean you don't have to post again. You can always answer and chat, and let's get some dialogue happening in the Delta team, please. And whoever you are, Hal, Naomi, are you actually in the chat? So you are already joined the chat? Or I will ask Naomi, are you in our messenger chat? Question mark. And let's see. And then, of course, again, we have 5 weeks until our next class. And until then, I hope to wish you... okay, that's wonderful. Okay. Will you please quote your identity there? Because we want to add you to the Delta team. Did we add you to the Delta team? Did we add you to our Delta team? Question. Yeah, so we'll fix this stuff. Yeah, so I wish everyone a lovely winter festivities period with yeah, wonderful. With your lovely families and friends. It's the coldest time of the year. On the 20th evening, it becomes the darkest evening, and then it becomes brighter again. So the days are going to get brighter, inshallah. And to close today, I appreciate if we all read Fatiha together in silence, please, and close. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. I have very much appreciated the first part of this academic year with all of you, and I hope to continue in the next Gregorian calendar year, inshallah. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Thank you so much. Alhamdulillahi rabbil alamin.